Hi everyone, I hope you all are great. Today we will have simple compound complex and compound complex sentences. First, you have to log in using the apluslen.com. Click on your name, move on to language at the grade 9. So we will get the high school advanced lesson classes from the grade 9 rather. So we go to grade 9 and we can find this chapter. Lesson is identify dependent and independent clause. Is a sentence simple, compound, complex, or compound complex? All right, so we will start now. A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate. So a clause contains both the subject and predicate. Now, under the clause, we have independent clause. Independent clause is a complete thought. It can stand alone as a sentence. And then the dependent clause is not a complete thought and it cannot stand alone as a sentence. So let's pick up some sandwiches from Pete's Cafe. Now, the clause can stand alone. It is independent. After Kevin gets off work, now this is dependent because we do not know what's gonna happen after Kevin gets off work. Okay? Alright, so then we also have complex sentence. Now, complex sentence is made up of an independent clause and a dependent clause. So it's made up of the two. Now, the dependent clause is in a complex sentence usually begins with a subordinating conjunction. So the dependent clause begins with a subordinating conjunction or relative pronoun. Subordinating conjunctions include after, although, as, because, before, if, since, unless, until, when, and while. So once you see that it's beginning with any of this, you know that that's a dependent clause. And sometimes it could begin with that, which, who, whom, or whose, which is the relative pronouns. So we have let's pick up some sandwiches from Pet Cafe after Kevin gets off work. So after you can see that the dependent clause begins with after. Then, during his trip to Italy, Tony visited the Trevi Fountain, which is in Rome, which is a relative clause, and it shows that this is the beginning of the subordinating conjunction and also the dependent clause. So let's look at some more examples. Because here we'll be identifying dependent and independent clause. So we have when Jackie replaced her old air conditioner with a new energy effective energy efficient model, she saved money on her electric bill. So you can see that it starts with when, which means that the when is the dependent clause. Okay. All new insurers at the company must attend a mandatory meeting, which the supervisor has scheduled for Friday, which is the beginning of the dependent clause. And then from the beginning here, we have independent clause. So let's move to the test, and you can share your answers with me if you know them. All right, so it's asking for dependent clause. Since Japan has little arable land, it cannot grow enough crop for its population and must import much of its food. So where's the beginning of the dependent clause? All right, so we have what? Since. Okay. Each year, around 2.5 million people visit the ruins of Pompeii, which was destroyed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. So where's the dependent clause here? All right, so we have from which the second one. All right, so while the telephone connected 50 million people within 75 years of its inception, the internet accomplished the same feat in only 4 years. So, first the second dependent clause. All right, so we have the second one rather. Vicky sat restlessly in the car while she waited for the heater to defrost the windshield. First the second dependent clause. So we have the first while. So that's like the dependent clause. Okay. Between 1860 and 1861, 11 states formally seceded from the United States of America and formed an independent nation, which they named the Confederate States of America. First to second dependent clause. So we have the second, which, okay. While a stray cat is usually defined as a lost or abandoned pet, a feral cat lives in the wild and avoids human contact. Independent clause. We have the first one for independent clause. If a word is spelled the same if a word is spelled the same forward and backwards, for example, civic, rotator, radar, kayak, or did, it is known as palindrome. So, independent clause. All right, so we have if first, second one. All right, so we have today's medical student or a debt to Dr. Henry Gray, whose renowned 1858 book, Anatomy, Descriptive and Surgical, is still an indispensable guide to the structure of the human body. Dependent clause. So we have the first one. All right, that's it for the first lesson. Move on to the next. Try to complete this lesson if you haven't done it, okay? So we have is the sentence simple, compound, complex, or compound, complex? So we already have the clause and we know what the clause is. We know the dependent clause and independent clause. Now, a simple sentence is made up of a single independent clause. Remember that independent clause is a complete thought and it can stand alone. Ben and I spent all day relaxing by the pool. So some simple sentence has introductory phrases, but the introductory phrase is part of the predicate. Like in the winter, Ben usually wears his heavy coat, or Ben usually wears his heavy coat in the winter. So that's it for a simple sentence. You just have to note that it's just like a single independent clause. Now we have compound sentence. Compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction. So it's joined by a coordinating conjunction and but also. Alright, so that's what joins the compound sentence. It's two independent clauses. So we saw the flash of lightning and seconds later we had the rumble of thunder. So compound sentences are made up of two independent clauses and they are joined by coordinating conjunctions. So we have the complex sentence. It is made up of an independent clause and a dependent clause, just like what we did earlier before we moved on to this lesson. The dependent clause is a complex sentence. In a complex sentence, usually begins with a subordinating conjunction or relative pronoun like although, as, because, before, if, and the rest of them. And then we have relative pronouns like that, which, who, whom, or whose. So just like the first lesson we did, that's like the complex sentence. All right. So if she ever gets the chance, Terry would love to visit the Egyptian pyramids. During his trip to Italy, Tony visited the Trevi Fountain, which is in Rome. Okay. So you can see that we have simple sentence, we have compound, and we have complex. They all have different ways that they operate. And then now we have the compound complex. It is made up of two or more independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. So for the compound complex, you can have two independent sentence or clauses in the sentence, or you can have two dependent clauses in the sentence. It can be any of them. Just like saying after Samantha left work, she stopped at the bank and then she went to the gym. Now, sometimes a dependent clause in a complex or compound complex can interrupt an independent clause. So sometimes it can interrupt, and sometimes you can have two independent clauses in the sentence, or you can as well even have two dependent clauses in the sentence. So we have what type of sentence is this? Eric always approaches difficult tasks enthusiastically and he frequently motivates others with his energy and fervor. So what kind of sentence is this? This has to be what? A compound sentence because it has the coordinating conjunction. Okay. So we have since 1923, the United States Flag Code has provided adversary rules for displaying and handling the US flag. So this is a single independent clause. So this is what simple sentence. So we'll move on to the test and you can actually just share your answers with me if you know them. So since it takes approximately 1000 years for used printer cartridge to decompose, recycling these plastic ink dispensers help the environment, complex or simple. So we have complex sentence. As Pat sat down on the rickety old chair, it abruptly collapsed beneath him. Simple or compound? So we have what? Simple. Students are unhappy with the new dress code requirements and they will be discussing their grievances at the next school board meeting. Simple compound. So this is compound. Because most wild orchids naturally affix themselves to trees and branches, planting an orchid in soil will likely kill it. Simple or complex? So we have complex. After a parrotfish eats algae covered coral, the coral travels through the fish's digestive system and then it it deposited in the reef as wild coral sound. So compound, complex, or compound. So we have compound complex. The vibrant trumpet-shaped blooms of the trumpet vine make it ideal for attracting hummingbirds. Simple compound. So we have simple. Alright, that's it for our lesson today. Can you tell me if you have any questions? So since we have no questions, we'll end here for today. Try to complete this lesson if you haven't done it, and then we will see you again next time. Bye everyone.